Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. Well, it's time for our monthly check-in with Tom Caldwell. He's the chairman of Caldwell Securities in Toronto. We'll discuss the federal budget, of course, economic news, and more. Welcome back, Tom.
Thank you, Tony.
First, I'd love to get your reaction to the federal budget. What did you think?
In a word, relief. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as it could have been. One of my concerns was they were going to come for capital gains in some form or fashion, whether that be investments, whether it be houses. I think that was one of the ones that was on my mind and a concern. Clearly, the big issue is, well, there are two big issues, really. One is the size of these deficits and the debt we are creating. This is really hamstringing us if we have challenges in the future. And there will be challenges. I mean, things like Ukraine show us that things surprise us that we don't even anticipate. We're not building a cushion for that. The other thing that sort of concerns me is there's not a plan for growth in Canada and nurturing industries, building industries, creating an industrial policy where we're actually taking advantage of our oil and gas assets in some way. And I know that conflicts with the climate change crew, but I do think those are two issues. But other than that, I'm not going to complain about it because the areas in which I'm concerned, I know that's quite subjective, seem to be let go for the time being. So it could have been a lot worse is really my basic comment.
Let's talk about growth for a second, because there was a chart that was included in the budget which looked at prospective growth from 2020 to 2060 in OECD rich countries. And Canada was depicted as 21st out of 21 countries. Surely that must concern you.
Of course it is. You can see it happening day in and day out. We're living in a fool's paradise, relying, interestingly enough, on energy and gas exports to keep our dollar up. But meanwhile, in terms of innovation, new companies, new financings of companies, and growth in Canada, job creation, yeah, I know our unemployment numbers at 5.5%, but our participation rate is probably down a good distance. But we are not doing anything in that regard. Let me tell you how important industrial policies are. When I was growing up, quality products came from Britain and garbage products came from Japan. And in fact, it was a joke if someone gave you a made in Japan. Now it's totally reversed. British products are all disasters. You wouldn't even buy anything. And Japanese products, that's where the quality is. That's a result of a conscious national policy to build quality, to build manufacturing industries. And we don't have anything like that. I use that just as a little example. We're not nurturing entrepreneurs. We're not nurturing building of business here. As I said before, this is a great country to start a business. It's not a great country to build a business. And they have to do more thinking in that regard.
Are you seeing any analysis about the impact of the budget on inflation, for example?
I don't think it has a major factor. I mean, it more so in the States, spending in the States where you have a lot stronger economy. I think the budget can add to inflation. But inflation in Canada and in the US to the same degree, I think, is really supply driven, not demand driven. It's choke points in supply chain. It's workers not wanting to come back to work and staying at home. So you got to pay a lot of money to bribe people back. It's energy prices percolating through everything else. It's not excess demand. And throwing excess demand on top of that with government spending just exacerbates it. It doesn't do much either way, but it is on the negative side. The more you have government spending at a time when you have supply chains choked. And that's really the big factor behind inflation at the present time. That's why I think these numbers are suspect, probably temporary. How temporary, I don't know. Maybe temporary for a year. I have no idea.
We've got about a minute left before the first break. Obviously, one of the big points of news recently is the interest rate hikes. Did you expect that to happen?
Oh, yes. With inflation so high, there's tremendous pressure on central banks to raise interest rates, to, quote, do something. It's really not going to really affect inflation very much, but it looks as if central banks are being decisive. And they are political animals, after all, not a royal priesthood apart from the economy. So they're doing what is expected, and they telegraph what they're going to do long in advance. And in so doing, there are no surprises here. So it was pretty well expected. It didn't affect anything, really.
So no impact on the markets?
No. Markets are actually up. So it's in fact, even, it didn't impact the interest sector as we saw it.